Hi everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. In this video, I'm going to go ahead and talk about the geography of Israel, of the United States, Utah, Missouri, Jerusalem. We're going to talk about population centers, geographic centers. We're going to talk a little bit about the community of, the Church of Christ Temple Lot, and the community of Christ. I've been doing kind of like an unofficial 3-part series. You don't have to watch them in order. I already did this one, clarifying is New Jerusalem, meaning the center place, supposed to be in Salt Lake City? Has it moved? Or is it still planned to be in Jackson County? So I did a video about that 2 videos ago, and then I put out this one where we go over the names of the temples that are part of the 24 temple complex. That will happen sometime in the future when New Jerusalem is built. I didn't know that they had names, and there's a lot of other just interesting details about those temples, the city, the names of the streets. Like there was a lot more detail than what I realized. That's one thing with this channel. It's like I keep coming across things that I had no idea about. I've been a lifelong member, and I'm legit just like, there's all these new things all the time. I don't know when it's going to end. 3 videos ago, I was talking to Eli Michel with Israel 365. He is an Israeli Orthodox Jew, and he brought up a very interesting insight about the tribal land of Benjamin and Judah and how Jerusalem is on the border of those 2 pieces of land. So this is from, this is a church map, right? You can find this in your quad. So here you have Judah in green, right? And here's Benjamin, just a little piece of land. And the way that it looks on the church map is that Jerusalem is in Benjamin. So when I was talking to Eli Michel, I was like, oh yeah, Jerusalem was in Benjamin. But he said that it was on the border. So I looked up some other maps. Okay, this is from jewishvirtuallibrary.org. And it's not really a high resolution image, but you can see that they have it like this, where here's Benjamin, right? Binyamin. And here's Jerusalem, this red square. And then down here, Judah, Yehuda. And yeah, it makes it look like on this map that it's like squarely on the border of the 2. I looked up just another one. This is from, what is this? conformingtojesus.com. And they have it kind of more like we do, where Jerusalem is a little bit more on the side of Benjamin. But regardless, and I haven't really studied the scriptures for this, if it describes exactly where Jerusalem is. It's never really been of interest to me, and I didn't do it for this particular video, but it's not the point. When he brought this up, okay, because what he was saying basically is that the fact that Jerusalem is in between these 2 tribes, Benjamin being the son of Rachel, and then Judah being the son of Leah, those were kind of like the 2 main wives of Jacob, that Jerusalem being in the middle was kind of like a symbol of the unity between all the tribes, right? So, excuse me. So I thought that was an interesting concept, and it makes a lot of sense. And this made me immediately think about Kansas City. So why did that make me think of Kansas City? Well, it's because Kansas City, as you know, is the metro area that houses the future New Jerusalem, specifically the suburb of Independence, Missouri. Here's Kansas City, here's Independence, and you can see that the Kansas City metro area straddles the border between Missouri on the east and Kansas on the west, right? And I'm sure that in the future, in the millennium, this will probably somewhat stay the same, although According to the last video and the original plans for the city, it seemed like it was supposed to be there was like a plat. It wasn't nearly this size. It was much smaller. But I assume that this area would probably fill up with similar cities after the same pattern of New Jerusalem, right? And so you may still have in the future during the millennium metropolitan areas like this. I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. But what's interesting is, you have Independence right here. This is the center place, and it's really close to a border. Now, this border is not like a biblical border per se. It's a modern political border between two states within the United States. But it's interesting that there's that parallel. Furthermore, it's interesting that Independence is, even though it's really close to the border, just like how when we're looking at our church map in our scriptures, how it seems like Jerusalem was a little bit more on the Benjamin side. It's interesting that you kind of have like the same thing here, how New Jerusalem is a little bit more on the Missouri side, right? So that's kind of interesting. And Ellie Michelle explained that the reason why, in addition to the fact that it kind of signified unifying the tribes, being a border city, just like Washington, D.C., how Washington, D.C., the city is not part of a state, it's its own district. It makes it so that even though there's unification, you don't have you don't have a state that can claim, we have the capital city, and then cause problems that way. It's like a neutral location, essentially. So unification and neutral, and it seems like there's kind of a similar thing going on here. In the millennium, are we still going to have states like we do now? We really don't know. We know that there's going to be an end to the nations as we know them. But I've wondered, would it become the type of thing where, the whole world is under Christ, he is the king, but he keeps like some of these political boundaries, maybe redraws some of them. And instead of being sovereign countries, instead of like Brazil being a sovereign country, it's more like you have the world, and the entire world is like the United States, or, I know this is going to ruffle some feathers, but United Nations, or however you want to think about it. So it's possible that maybe these borders will remain, and there's still going to be a Missouri and Kansas that exist into the millennium. Don't know. So I thought that was super interesting. Okay, let me zoom out. Let's see. Let me just do this in order. So we looked at these maps. Okay, let's talk about the camp of Israel. So I'll need to pull up Photoshop. I forgot to pull this up. This was another key part of it. Okay, pulling up Photoshop. This is just my way of presenting things. Okay, here we go. Click out of all this. Okay, so this is another concept, and this is a repeat, but there's always new people joining the channel, and it's worth reviewing anyway. When Israel was wandering in the wilderness after the Exodus from Egypt, they whenever they camped somewhere, they camped in a particular order. You had the tabernacle, which was a portable temple that was in the center. It was surrounded by 4 camps of the Levites, right? And then around them, you had the other tribes. And they were grouped in 3, right? So over here, Zebulun, Judah, and Issachar. And each group of 3 had a leader tribe. So for these 3, it would have been Judah. For these 3, it would have been Reuben. For these 3, it was Ephraim. For these ones on the north, it was Dan. Those were the leader tribes. And when they marched out, they marched in a similar way, not exactly like this. I'm not going to pull that up, but they marched in a particular order. Okay, so what I noticed earlier on in the channel was that the United States seems to somewhat be set up like this, where we have a tabernacle in the middle, we have Judah on the east, and Ephraim in the west. And I'm sure that you can already tell where I'm going with this. So using Photoshop, which is my, it's kind of my bread and butter, because before doing YouTube, I was into photography, but primarily graphic design. That's what I used to do as my main business. But now it's YouTube. Okay, so what I've done before is I realized that, the majority of members of the church in the United States are in the West, obviously. And here's a graphic, okay? This is percent members of the church. So red would be a county where the population is between 90 and 100% LDS. Okay, so obviously Utah is all lit up, as well as southeastern Idaho, and then generally just the Intermountain West, and then even more general than that, the Western United States. Okay, and we know that the majority, or at least in the United States, it would seem the majority of the church is from Ephraim. I did this anonymous poll. I keep bringing it up just in case more people want to be part of this poll. It's anonymous. I'll put the link in the description below. You click on the link and then you just answer this one question. What tribe are you from? And you can do this. So far, we've had 1,033 people respond. And it's pretty much the same. Ephraim's gone down just a little bit. It is now at 89.4% of those 1,033 respondents that are from Ephraim. The next biggest slice is Manasseh at 5.5%. And then you can look at it this way. So we have Ephraim and Manasseh in the number 1 and 2 spots, respectively. Next, we have just simply Joseph, because it seems that there's been a handful of people that have only been assigned to Joseph, but not to Ephraim or Manasseh. After that, the next biggest group is Judah, and then Benjamin and Levi. Those are the 3 tribes that are currently typically associated with Jews, right? These are the 3 main tribes of modern day Jews. Have a few that are just Abraham. Even though Abraham is not one of the sons of Israel, he is in fact the great-grandfather. There are some people that are only, their lineage is declared only through Abraham, which is interesting, and I didn't know that before this channel. After that, we have 3 Dan, 2 Reuben, 2 Gad, 1 Simeon, 1 Naphtali, 1 Asher, 1 Issachar, and 1 Zebulun. Okay, so the vast majority. So when we're looking at this map, sorry, I think that we can reasonably assume that the vast majority of these are Ephraim and Manasseh. And they're primarily in the east, or in the west, I mean. Now, interestingly, in the United States, what we have is a sizable Jewish population. In fact, about pretty similar in size to the Jews that live in Israel. These are the 2 major population centers for Jews, Israel and the United States. And in the United States, the vast majority of them live in the Northeast, primarily around New York City, but also in New Jersey, Massachusetts, and just, the Northeast. You have a sizable population down here in Florida, as well as in California. Again, this is like a percentage of population, so by county. There's also this right here, which instead of by county, it's by state. So you can see that the 3, okay, let's put it this way. The biggest area, or the highest population, would be here, pretty much centered on New York. Which is interesting because, again, Joseph Smith, that's where he began as far as receiving the first vision. I know that he's from Vermont, but that's where the restoration began, was in New York. And since that time, the church has moved from there, at least like the main body of the church has moved from there. But right now, today, that is primarily where the Jews live: New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts, so on. Okay, so let's see, what's this? Okay, so going back here, what I did is I went ahead and I overlaid the Jewish population map over the LDS population map. So you can see, okay, Ephraim, Manasseh over here, and then we got Judah over here. And let's say that the temple or the tabernacle is in the middle. Why? Because this is where Independence, Missouri is. This is the future site of the New Jerusalem. Whenever it's constructed, this is going to be one of the two world headquarters. It's going to be in Jackson County, Missouri, right here. Okay, so we'll just assume that this is metaphorically, symbolically, the tabernacle if the United States was a camp of Israel, right? And so going back to this graphic, it fits. It fits. And interesting is that you see how they're all spaced pretty much equidistant from the tabernacle. You have kind of the same thing going on here. So from Salt Lake City to Jackson County is approximately, okay, I wasn't going to do the exact amount. It doesn't need to be that specific, but approximately 939 miles. Okay. From Jackson County to New York City, it's more like 1,100 miles. And then interestingly, from Jackson County to Washington, D.C., it is about 939 miles. So just relatively speaking, not going by absolute numbers, but relatively, it's about equidistant. It's about equidistant. And there are a lot of Jews that are in Washington, D.C., based on this map. Let me see if I can zoom in here. So this little square right here, this is Washington, D.C., and it's in the dark blue. You know, in Maryland, it seems like most of them are around Washington, D.C., probably Baltimore and stuff like that. So I find that fascinating. I find that fascinating that the United States, at least the lower 48, the continental United States, is laid out like this currently, you know, and that it's centered on one of the Jerusalems, on one of the future capital cities of the world. I don't think that this is coincidence. It just seems to be part of the order of God, right? He works in an orderly way. He works in ways I think sometimes we don't really understand, just on higher levels, but in everything that he does and the way that he runs this world, everything is orderly. And I can't help but to think that this is part of that order. And then here's the overlay of the camp of Israel. It fits really well. It fits really, really well, I think. So I find that fascinating. I've already covered this before, but I wanted to bring it up again, that we have this interesting thing going on here in the United States. And this is something that no other church or religion can claim, because no one else is based out of Utah. There might, you have like splinter groups like polygamists and stuff like that, but as far as like large, more like mainstream religions, there aren't any that are based out of the United States or even anywhere out west, right? You have, for example, you have these splinter groups that are in Missouri, like the Community of Christ, the Church of Christ Temple Lot, but they don't match this pattern. It's really, really interesting. Okay, so we got that. Now, I was also interested in the the Geographic Center and Population Centers of the United States and Israel. And I put it all on Google Earth, but I'm just going to show you the sources here. So Okay, so let's just kind of go back and forth. So let's go here. Let's go to Google Earth. And what I'm going to turn on is my folder called, wait, where is it? Sorry, give me just 1 second. Oh, there it is. Okay. I thought it got deleted. Okay, I have a folder for centers in the United States and in Israel. So here is independence. I should put a separate thing for this. Okay, I'm going to let me do this marker right here. Let's just do New Jerusalem for this. Okay. So here you have New Jerusalem, right? Independence, Missouri. You zoom out, and you can see it's surrounded by these different centers of the United States. So close by, you have the Geographic Center for the lower 48 states. So this would not include Alaska or Hawaii. And it's in Kansas, in a place called, or near, the nearest town to there is Lebanon. Here, I'll turn, oh, there it is, Lebanon. See? So here's the Geographic Center of the lower 48 states. And it's interesting that it's so close, relatively speaking, to New Jerusalem. It's pretty close, right? And if you go there, you have this plaque right here. This is on the Quirky Travel Guys blog. He took a picture of this. The Geographic Center in a park 3 miles north and 1 mile west is the exact geographic center of the 48 contiguous states. The location has been officially established by the U.S. Geological Survey. It is the point where a plane map of the 48 states would balance if it were of uniform thickness. Transcontinental highway mileage is here, and so it has that, right? Further up north into the west in South Dakota, you have the Geographic Center of the entire United States. So if you were to include Alaska and Hawaii, this is where it would be, in South Dakota. Furthermore, for North America, I didn't put it on here, but I think for North America, including Canada and Mexico, I think it's in South or North Dakota. I'm not sure. I'm not so interested in that one. And then we have these population centers, okay? Now, this is pretty interesting, the population centers. There's two. You have the mean center of population. So mean is like the average. If you were to like just average it all out across the entire United States, and if you had a center, this is where it would be. It would be in Missouri. And then the median center of population is in Indiana. The median is pretty easy to understand. If you were right here at this point, the median, if you went north of it, or sorry, let's just say that you're at the median. You're right at the center of the median. North of you would be exactly half of the population of the United States. If you drew a line from east to west, half of the United States would be north of you, half would be south of you. And likewise, if you drew a line north and south through that point, half of the United States population would be east of you and half of it would be west. So that's what median is. So that's similar, but it's different from the average, okay? So it's interesting that you have these that are also so close. Now, even more interesting, oh, here's the plaque for the entire United States. I'm not going to read that, but there you go. It's in South Dakota. What's interesting is that the population changes over time, right? People move around, and the trend for the mean, so that's the average center of the United States, has gone from Maryland and it's traveled westward over time. So as of right now, or at least as of 2020, It's currently in Missouri. That's where it is. We were just looking at it, but it wasn't always there. It used to be in Illinois, it used to be in Indiana, Ohio, West Virginia, and then Maryland. So it's interesting that over time, it has slowly made its way over closer and closer to New Jerusalem and Maryland. Now, it looks like the trend is it's kind of like going down, but who knows what it'll do. There's a similar thing going on for the median. That's the one where half of the population is east of you, west of you, north of you, south of you of the United States. So let me zoom out. So this one, starting in 1880, was in Ohio, and then it traveled again westward into Indiana, and it's still in Indiana right now, but it's getting really close to the border of Indiana. It's in Gibson County right here, and it's right there. So going back to Google Earth, I have it right here, and then the mean is over here. And both of them have been traveling westward. All right. Now let's go over to Israel. Okay. And you have a similar situation. I wasn't able to find the population centers, like the mean and the median population centers for Israel. I'm sure it's out there somewhere, but I had a heck of a time trying to find it. If I find that in the future, I'll do a new video. But there are several geographic centers based on different definitions. So for one, you have the traditional center of Israel. And the way that they're looking at that is it's kind of like the center point when you're traveling from the very northernmost part to the very southernmost part right here. This is like the center as you're traveling, but it's not like a geographic center. You have these two down here, Geographic Center of Israel, which would go according to basically the borders that the United Nations and the world recognize. This would be the Geographic Center. But you also have the Geographic Center de facto of the territory of Israel. I'm not going to go into all the minutia. There's yet another one. And I think that this one right here is the more, like the one that we'd be more interested in. The Geographic Center or centroid of the whole of Palestine. The reason why is because eventually Israel is going to have all of its land back, but it's not going to kick out, the Arabs and stuff that live there. It's just that Christ is going to be back, and there's not going to be this like dispute anymore. It's going to be resolved. And so I'm sure Israel will actually probably expand west or eastward a little bit, because we know that you had tribes over here like Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh that had land over here, which is currently in Jordan. But what's interesting right now is if you're looking at the entire thing, you're not thinking about the Gaza Strip or West Bank or Golan Heights. You're just like looking at this as a whole, as though it all belonged to Israel. The center point for that is relatively close to Jerusalem, right? Jerusalem's right here. It's pretty close to the center of quote unquote Palestine. So that's another similarity. That's another similarity between Israel and the United States, that these future world capitals, Jerusalem and New Jerusalem, are relatively close to the geographic centers. And in the case of the United States, New Jerusalem is also close to the population centers. Okay. I wanted to point this out as I was putting all this stuff together. I want to remind everybody where the intersection of the 2017 and the 2014 eclipses is. It is close to the city of Carbondale in Illinois. Interestingly, it's in Jackson County, Illinois. That's a mighty interesting name for the county of these, what seem to be significant eclipses. The actual intersection point is it's close to here. I'm going to turn place names on. This is called Cedar Lake right here. And I wasn't able to find the exact coordinates because I'm not sure that anybody has that. I don't know, but between all the different sites that I looked at, it seemed like the intersection was basically right here at the tip or on the shore, the east shore of this lake, right about here. Okay. So this is the exact intersection point. The path of totality will go over Carbondale. But anyway, yeah. So that's interesting. It's not in Missouri, but it is very close. What is interesting about it, though, is it's in between these two population centers. So the median over here, the mean over here, and the intersection is somewhat equidistant between the two. In fact, why don't we go ahead and let's measure it right now. Let's do it by miles. So roughly from the mean to here, that's about 169 miles. Okay, clear. And then from the median to there is 104. So not quite equidistant, but somewhat. So if there's a message being sent, it seems like this is it. These excuse me, these eclipses definitely have to do with the church because they cover very important church sites, right? We've talked about the path of totality, how it covered both Independence all the way up to Adam-on-Diamond in 2017, which would have included Far West and other church sites. It couldn't have deviated more than a couple miles. Otherwise, these sites wouldn't have been in the path of totality, right? And then the one that's coming up in 2024 goes over Kirtland, Ohio, right here, in Palmyra, up here. So it seems like these eclipses definitely have to do with our church because they go over these church sites, right? Places where Christ has appeared, will appear. Now, the place where they intersect is not a church location, but it is in between these two population centers. So if I were to interpret that, and I'm not saying that this is the correct interpretation, it seems like it has everything to do with the church and with the United States, the entire population of the United States. Most likely the fact that things are coming to a head, the end of all nations is coming really soon. And, I don't know, but it seems like that's the warning, right? So that's what you got. Okay, so let me click out of these. Now let's take a look at upside down Utah. First, let's make sure we're familiar with the layout of Israel. I'm sure most of you are, but maybe not. So here's Israel, right? You have the Dead Sea, and then northwest of the Dead Sea is Jerusalem. It's not that far from the Dead Sea. You have the Jordan River right here. It goes up to the freshwater lake of the Sea of Galilee. Here's Nazareth, which is roughly as Jerusalem is to the Dead Sea. Nazareth is to the Sea of Galilee in terms of its relative location to its respective lake, right? So that's Israel. And then you zoom out, you have Babylon, or historic Babylon, to the east, right here in modern day Iraq. And then further east, you have Persia, which is modern day Iran. These were the first two big empires to basically give Israel problems from the time of the Babylonian invasion and captivity. After that, it was the Persians. After that, the Persians and the Medians. After that, it was the Greeks. After that, the Romans, right? So these are significant locations. Babylon, Persia, and they're to the east, right? And then the Romans, they were to the west, and they're right here in Italy, centered on, modern day Rome. It's still there. Okay. So there's that. Let's go back to the United States. Let's turn it upside down so it kind of looks like Israel. And I'm going to turn on my upside down Utah folder. So you have a very similar thing going on here. You have the Great Salt Lake. It's the same type of lake as the Dead Sea. It's a terminal lake where you have rivers and inlets that go into the lake, but there's nothing that drains it. And so it just collects all this salt and nastiness, and it's just a gross place. Well, let's pretend that this is north and this is south, right? Because I turned the map upside down. So it's the same thing. Jerusalem, or Salt Lake City, is northwest of the Great Salt Lake when the map is upside down, right? So that would mean that Bethlehem, if you're doing this this metaphor, or this, as we put these two together, Bethlehem would probably be somewhere down here, maybe Woods Cross, North Salt Lake, or Bountiful. Starts with a B, so I don't know. And I'm not being too serious about this. It's not like it's whatever. But it's interesting to note. And then you have the Jordan River. I don't know exactly the course that it takes. I know it kind of comes over here, but because you have like the Jordan River Parkway that's here in Murray. I went there all the time back when I lived there. But it eventually makes its way up to Utah Lake, which would be like the Sea of Galilee. And Nazareth would probably be, I don't know what you would equate it with, but maybe Provo, maybe Orem. But that's interesting. It's interesting to note that the population of Utah, or at least the Ogden, Salt Lake, and Provo metro areas, it's all kind of squeezed and all up along these mountains right here. It's kind of like up and down, right? If we go and we look at Israel, I thought I had that map up. Maybe not. That's okay. I'll look it up. Jerusalem. Go like this. Zoom out. You see kind of the same thing. When it comes to Israel, the population, because of the shape of the country, it's mostly up and down. You have Beersheba, Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, Netanya, Haifa, Nazareth. It's all kind of just like up and down rather than spread out, right? Because when you look at places like say, let's go to Phoenix. Phoenix is not up and down. Phoenix is nice and wide and spread out. It's more circular in shape, right? Same thing with, let's go to Las Vegas. Las Vegas is just a nice big round shape. And that's typically how big cities are, right? Let's go to Missouri. Let's look at Kansas City. Yeah, it's just a nice round shape. Here's Topeka, Kansas. Here's Manhattan, Kansas. Wichita is down here. It is also a circle. So Salt Lake is kind of like a exception to the rule, and it's because of the limitations of these, or the limits set on it by the Wasatch Front and these mountains right here. But because of that, it makes it so that it kind of resembles Israel, just upside down. Just upside down. It's weird. How does that happen? When you go north, you come across Cedar City. That's in southern Utah. But when we have the map turned upside down, it's north of, Jerusalem, Salt Lake City. It's north. And when we're looking at the map of Israel, you go north, you come across Lebanon, and Lebanon is associated with cedars, right? The cedars of Lebanon. So it's very peculiar. Zoom out. Remember what I was talking about with Israel right here, Babylon being to the east? Well, we do have a very, a very good comparison city called Las Vegas. I'm going to turn this off. Right here. Las Vegas, like, you know that in the scriptures, Babylon is always equated to wickedness. It's equated to the world, right? I'm not sure if I can think of many more wicked cities than Las Vegas. And I'm not talking about the general population, because Las Vegas has become its own, sizable metro area. There's a lot of good people here. There's good places you can live, like Henderson, and there's a lot of good people, and there's a lot of members of the church here. But it's no secret what happens in this portion of Las Vegas, right? The Las Vegas Strip. You have Fremont Street, which is, I think it's like right here. This is Fremont Street. This is the other strip. It's the one where you have like the ceiling archway that goes over the street, and it has there's light displays and stuff like that. So, one of the nicknames that Las Vegas has taken on with pride, it seems, is Sin City. It's Sin City. Las Vegas, its official nickname is Sin City. Okay. So I feel like this is a pretty good match to Babylon, right? It's also very nice and very fancy. You go to these places, it's very upscale. These casinos are very, very nice. And there's a lot of rich people that live here. Babylon, back in the day, it was very nice. When the Jews were carried captive to Babylon, I was just talking to Rabbi Gerfine about this, and I think he said that only 30% or maybe 25% of Jews returned to Israel when they were allowed to go back. And it's because back in those days, Babylon was it was like New York City. It was like a developed area. Living was better there compared to going back to Israel, which was more, in the boonies and from the standpoint of civilization, backwards or not as developed, right? And so Las Vegas, if you have money and you're a worldly person, it's a nice place to live. You have lots of really good food there. The buffets are amazing. I don't think you can find buffets like you can in Las Vegas. There's plenty of entertainment. There's all the comforts of life, right? It's a good place to live if you're a worldly person. Like I said, some of these casinos are just gorgeous to walk through. The Venetian, the Wynn, Mandalay Bay, basically all of them. Well, not all of them, but the main ones. All right, so that's enough about Las Vegas. So I think you could easily equate Las Vegas to Babylon. And then further east, quote unquote east, as we're looking at it upside down, you have another pretty wicked place, a place that's considered wicked, California. And I'm not saying that if you're from California, you're wicked. There's a lot of good people here. I know, especially in the north, they don't want anything to do with Southern California. But even in Southern California, there's good people. And like I said, we have many, just like Las Vegas, there are many members of the church in California. We have many temples here. But there's no getting around the fact that San Francisco is generally not viewed as a very wholesome place. Mountain View here in the Silicon Valley, this area, there's a lot of good, but also a lot of bad that comes from there. Let's look at Los Angeles. I don't need to tell you the things that come out of here. That this is where Hollywood is, right? Hollywood and all these movies and entertainment that are produced to essentially program you to change your perspective, to get you to conform to current philosophies of men, right? It's not just entertainment. It's more than that. So you have Hollywood, right? So this is I think it's a pretty good Persia. Now, let's zoom out, right? And when you go east, what's interesting is you have this land feature right here in Michigan. And the land feature resembles a hand, right? A lot of people call it a mitten. Well, that's interesting because when you compare this to Europe and Israel, you have a boot. You have a foot right here, right? A foot, a hand, a foot and a hand, right? And it's basically a peninsula. And what's perfect about that is northern Michigan. This part is referred to the Upper Peninsula. It's part of Michigan. It's a lot of times they call it the UP. If you're from there, you're a Uper. Well, it's interesting because it's kind of like the same as Italy is to Greece. You have Michigan to the lower peninsula to the upper peninsula. And we know that Greece and Italy are very, very related. Greece was essentially like kind of like the forerunner to Rome, right? The Romans took a lot of their culture from Greece. They changed the name of their gods, but they're all basically the same. But culture, religion, civilization essentially started over here with Greece. Well, this particular civilization kind of went from Greece and kind of transferred or got adopted by Rome. Okay. So you have that. And what's interesting as well, I'm just talking about geography at this point, not so much cities, but just geography. The way that the United States is shaped, it's almost like Maine could correspond roughly to Spain because it has like this weird shape. You know, this is a peninsula, the Iberian Peninsula, but it looks like a head, you know, of a really weird type of creature. A weird type of creature. This would be like the head of Europe, right? You go up here with North Carolina, you see how it has this weird protrusion right here. This very much looks like France. France is called, one of its nicknames is the hexagon, because when you look at France, it has kind of like 6 sides. Like you have this right here, 1, and then 2, and then 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's why sometimes it's called the hexagon. And, you know, it has this very defined protrusion right here at one of the corners of the hexagon. And you have something very similar here with North Carolina. And it's roughly, you know, in the same area. You have Spain down here. You have France up here. You go north. And what you have here is you have something that kind of resembles Denmark. Denmark is kind of like the Florida of Europe, so to speak, right? Here you have Denmark, and then here you have a couple islands. This would this would correspond with Great Britain. Great Britain is just this island, okay? But when we're talking about the United Kingdom, you would also include Northern Ireland because that's part of the country. But it's not part of Great Britain. Great Britain is just Scotland, Wales, and England. But the political entity of United Kingdom includes Northern Ireland. And what's interesting about that is you have Cuba right here that would correspond to Great Britain. You would have Haiti that would correspond to Northern Ireland. And then the Dominican Republic would correspond to Ireland. Even though I'm aware that Cuba and Haiti are separate countries, there's a rough similarity. Okay, that's it. It's just a similarity. We don't need to get too technical with it. The Gulf of Mexico corresponds to the Baltic. And what's interesting here, you see how like when you go from Denmark, you go down here and then it curls up and around and you have Finland, Sweden, and Norway. Well, you have the same thing here. The Florida/Denmark, it curls up and around, which becomes Mexico. And you have kind of the equivalent of Finland, Sweden, and Norway. So I know that may be a stretch. Some of it's more of a stretch than other things, but I feel like it's still worth thinking about and considering. When you think about the world and the way that it's shaped, you know, the way that the Lord planned it, it does seem like there's order here too. You know, um, the fact that we have North and South America in these two continents were given to Joseph because he received a double portion. You know, it's interesting that uh, it's not like these lands were just random. It's like Heavenly Father planned it so that Joseph would have a double portion. So basically, you can think of it like this. South America and North America have the blessing of Joseph to thank for their existence. Because really, I don't think the Lord planned Joseph's blessing around this already being here, but rather these are here because of his blessing. Does that make sense? And so it would make sense that there's different synchronicities, different little things going on that add to the order of God. So, you know, you have America, you have Europe, and the Middle East that are kind of connected in a weird kind of way. And there's probably so much more. You know, there's so much more. You have, for example, Israel. If you go to the opposite side of the planet from Israel is Hawaii. And what do we have in Hawaii? Well, we have a lot of Nephites there. We have a lot of Nephites in Hawaii, as well as the rest of the Pacific, including Tonga, Samoa, New Zealand, right? How do we know that? Well, it's because there have been many, let's see. There have been many statements about the Polynesians and about Hawaii. Let me just read you a few. Let me see. In fact, let me do Control F, Hawaii. Okay, let's read this one. So this is, oh no, this is something else. Okay, Elder Matthew Cowley of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles speaking to Hawaiians. Brothers and sisters, you are God's children. You are Israel. You have in your veins the blood of Nephi. All right, let's look at the next one. Let's see. This is George Reynolds in the Journal of Discourses. We've been interested in hearing the report of Brother Edward Partridge, who has just returned from a mission to the Sandwich Islands, where the work of the Lord has been received for many years in a very gratifying manner by the remnant of the house of Israel who dwell thereon. It is also noticeable that the Maori, a people of a kindred race to the Hawaiian who inhabit the islands of New Zealand, many hundreds of miles southward in the Pacific Ocean, are also receiving the glad tidings of the gospel of Christ with joy, in that hundreds are being added to the church at the present time. It has long been the belief of the Latter-day Saints that these races are offshoots of the great people who once flourished upon this continent, who were brought out of the land of Jerusalem under Lehi, Mulek, and others, and who have inhabited this land for about 600 years before Christ. That people whose remnants are now found scattered far and wide over North and the South American continents. Okay, that's all I'm going to read about that. I have a bunch of statements. If you go to my spreadsheet and you go down to topics A and Z, like you click on this button down at the bottom left, it brings up all the different sheets that I have. Go to the very bottom, and the very last one is topics A through Z, and then just go down to row 9, which is Polynesians, and there's a whole plethora of quotes from general authorities talking about the fact that Polynesians are descended from Nephi. So that's why it's interesting that Hawaii is on the other side of the planet, opposite of Israel. And it's interesting, you've heard the phrase big kahuna. Let's see. Hawaiian kahuna. So a kahuna, we've gone over this on the channel before. but it's like a chief ruler. Okay. Give me a second. I wasn't planning on talking about this. Kahuna is a Hawaiian word that refers to an expert of any field. Historically, it's been used to refer to doctors, surgeons, and dentists, as well as priests, ministers, and sorcerers. Now, this is interesting because, remember, in Judaism, a Kohen is a priest. Okay? Right here, priest is the Hebrew word for priest, used in reference to the Aaronic priesthood, also called Aaronites or Aaronides. So you had the tribe of Levi, all of which were considered Leviim or Levites, except for the descendants or the sons of Aaron. They were priests. Okay, so you had the Levites, and then you had the priests. And the priests in Hebrew are called Kohanim. That's the plural. Or singular, it's Kohen. And so, do you think it's coincidence that you have Israel on one side that call their priest a Kohen, and you have the Hawaiians, which are Nephites, on the other side of the world that call their priest Kahuna? You think that's coincidence? I don't. I feel like that's evidence that they really are who we believe that they are, that they're descended from Nephi. Now, from research that we've done, the Mosaic Law was not performed by traditional Kohanim because we don't have any record of any Levites coming with Lehi. And furthermore, I'm going to have to find it. I'm going to have to probably add it to my topics spreadsheet, but I read somewhere, and I've done a video about it, where they were performing the temple ordinances that normally would have been done by the priests, the Kohanim, and the Levites. They were doing it under the direction of the Melchizedek priesthood. Okay, so the Melchizedek priesthood was in operation with the people of the Book of Mormon, but they were conforming to the law of Moses. Okay, does that make sense? So that's another interesting thing. Okay, there really does seem that there's order to everything, even including geography, and our minds will probably be blown once we learn all the secrets of this world, right? I don't think we know everything, but we can kind of get a glimpse into it with some of these more obvious things, but there's probably much more to it, right? Let me check my tabs, make sure I didn't miss anything. Oh yeah, and then of course there's this. We've talked about this, and many people have already realized this, but it's interesting to think that the Jews, okay, they're wanting to build the temple, but the temple has to be right here. The reason why is because the Dome of the Rock is over a rock that's supposed to be in the Holy of Holies. Okay? In fact, let me pull this up. Let me pull up the BYU's Virtual New Testament. Just go to Virtual New Testament. You'll find it, BYU, and you can download this for either your phone, tablet, or desktop. So let's go into the temple. Okay, here we are at the front of the temple. Let's go in. It'll take a second. When you get into the Holy of Holies, you have this exposed rock that's in there. And that is currently what is surrounded by the Dome of the Rock. You go in here. Here's the sanctuary. Go through the side right here. We're in the Holy of Holies. And here's the rock. Okay. That's why in the Jews have the tradition. I don't know if it's right or not. I'm sure it probably is. But they have the tradition that this is where Abraham was commanded to sacrifice Isaac. Right. And they also my understanding is that this is where Isaac laid his head to rest, like when he had a rock as a pillow. They also have a thing where there were originally like 12 rocks, but they came together. They basically mixed with each other and became one big rock. So they believe that that's what this is. So anyway, here let's go to let's go here. Look at it from here. So we're on the Mount of Olives. So the Jews have a problem right now in that they need to construct their temple, the third temple, in this location. But you have another religion that's occupying that spot, right? Well, we have a similar predicament when it comes to, okay, let's find it here. Google Earth. There we go. We have a similar predicament when we're talking about New Jerusalem. Because as we've talked about before, there's supposed to be a 24 temple complex here. And we have you have the site for the first temple of that complex that's supposed to be right here. But it is currently occupied by another church, a related church. You know, Islam and Judaism are related. They're both Abrahamic faiths. And what's interesting about that, think about this, is that Islam views itself as kind of like a restoration type church. They believe that the Jews lost their status as a covenant people. Muhammad came along about 600 AD and things were restored to how they were supposed to be. And that's kind of like the same thing here. You have the Church of Christ Temple Lot that is a splinter group from the main LDS movement, right? And they believe that they've corrected things. And so they own this little piece of land right here where the first temple is supposed to go. Now, we have the Independence Visitor Center that's currently acting as a visitor center, but it's meant to be one of the buildings that's supposed to be part of the temple complex, the 24 temple complex. So you could also argue not only is land being occupied right here by the Church of Christ Temple Lot, but it's also being occupied by the Community of Christ right here. If we get rid of this, we have three religions that are here, just like in Israel. In Israel, you have three main religions: Judaism, Christianity, Islam. And they all view the same piece of land as significant, right? Well, the same thing is going on here with New Jerusalem. You have us, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. You have the Community of Christ, and then you have the Church of Christ Temple Lot. Three religions with a common background, a common, what's it called? Whatever. They all come from the same source, essentially. These are splinter groups, but they come from the same source. And as far as the Community of Christ is concerned, they're good because they've built this temple, and that fulfills the requirement to build a temple there. And over time, they've become watered down. They don't even really take things literally anymore, as far as believing that Christ is going to come here as part of the second coming. But we do, and so does the Church of Christ Temple Lot. Okay. So that's a very interesting parallel. Now, unlike the Dome of the Rock, the Church of Christ Temple Lot, they have a meeting house right here, but it's not on top of where the temple would be built. It's off to the side. But even in that, there's a parallel. So this open piece of ground right here, this is where the temple would go. But on the other side of the world, let's go over there. It's still the same kind of situation in a sense, because the Dome of the Rock is not a mosque, right? It is simply a building to protect that rock, essentially. The actual holy site for Muslims is over here. It's Al-Aqsa Mosque. It's right here, and it's off to the side, just like how the Church of Christ Temple Lot, their main building is off to the side, and then you have the point of interest right here to the side of it. It's similar. It's almost like the same thing. Now, another thing that's interesting, okay, is you have, so here's like where the Jews want to build the third temple, okay? And then up here is the BYU Jerusalem Center, okay? Now, I've argued that this very well could become a temple in the future. Again, I know that if you've gone to BYU, you've been told, no, it cannot be. It was not meant to be. It's in the wrong location. We have an agreement with the government, right? I've done my research. I have not seen anything that says that we can't turn that building into something else if we wanted to. We do have an agreement not to proselytize in Israel, so no missionaries, and the center can't be used for a missionary center. But and I always have to stress, the church will not break the law. It will not go against the Israeli government. If they have an issue with it becoming a temple, then the church wouldn't do it. But there's nothing to say that the Lord can't turn this into a temple at some point, and that it would be similar to the 24 temple complex. If there's going to be a 24 temple complex in New Jerusalem, why wouldn't there be something similar in Old Jerusalem? So what's interesting here is if you look at the Temple Mount and you have that correspond to the Church of Christ Temple Lot, how it's not currently in our possession, can't build a temple there, but we do have a center that you can visit over here. Then you see there's yet another parallel, because the BYU Jerusalem Center would correspond to the Independence Visitor Center, both of which I believe, I know for the Independence Visitor Center, it's destined to become a temple. They built it that way. But I think the same thing is going on here with the BYU Jerusalem Center. And so you have yet another parallel. Now, why is there this red line going through the BYU Jerusalem Center? It's because I did a little experiment where if you draw a red line down the middle of the center, what do you end up with on the other side? Or what does this run through? Let me zoom out. In fact, let's just do this. Let's go to over here. That red line goes through the temple lot. Now, the argument can be made, you could actually move this red line a little bit, probably maybe 50 miles either side, maybe more, because it's not precise. Okay. It's not precise. I don't have a way right now to really make it precise, because this could be off by a little bit, like when you're talking about angles. But you do have 2 points here, the north side of the visitor center, or the BYU Jerusalem Center. You have another point here. So just the fact that it's even a possibility that this red line could go all the way around and go through the temple lot is pretty amazing. If you know of a way to make this more precise, then let me know. But I still think that that's pretty interesting. Okay. I need to find a way. I don't know if Google Earth has a way to make like a perfect circle around the globe. Cause I had to do this using 3 points. This is basically just like doing a measurement, and it's saved. But anyway, I'm going to look into that and see if I can make a perfect circle. But either way, it's pretty close. It's pretty close at the very least. Okay, so let's zoom out again. Zoom out. What else were we going to talk about? Let's go over here. This is just talking about the eclipse intersection point. I'll put all these links in the description below so you can verify all this stuff I'm talking about. Okay. And lastly, I wanted to talk about this, about the Church of Christ temple lot. So again, these are the ones that currently, like their name implies, they currently occupy the temple lot right here. Okay. This is where the primary temple would go. Now, if you didn't see my last video, and unfortunately it doesn't seem like very many people have watched it, I don't know why, I would encourage you to. I was able to find the names for all these temples because they all have names. But it's in groups of 3. So for example, these 3 right here, these are the primary temples. This is like the temples of the first presidency. They're called House of the Lord for the presidency of the high and most holy priesthood after the order of Melchizedek, which was after the order of the Son of God upon Mount Zion, city of the New Jerusalem. Again, I don't know if that's that entire thing is the name, but this is no joke. This is in the Millennial Star. And there's names for these groups of 3 temples. Okay. So this is the primary one. So the Church of Christ temple lot, most likely, this would probably be temple number 11. Okay. So these ones right here are for the Aaronic or for the Melchizedek priesthood, and they'd be facing east. And then these ones to the east are the Aaronic priesthood temples. So you have House of the Lord for the deacons in Zion, helps in government. This one's for the teachers. This one's for the priests, right? So this one, I think, number 11, I think is the one in question as we're talking about the Church of Christ temple lot. Okay, so this is an article from Fox 4 in Kansas City. 3 faiths around Independence Land where many believe second coming will occur. I've read this before a long time ago, but it's worth bringing it up again. Independence, Missouri. Not exactly a holy war, but there's a small piece of land in Jackson County that means everything to millions of people worldwide. Several different religions believe the second coming of Jesus will happen in Independence, Missouri, and to this day, 3 different churches surround that sacred soil. It could be seen as a kind of peaceful standoff preparing for the end times, but it hasn't always been peaceful. Okay, I'm skipping down. Here's something that's said by Randy Sheldon. I think he's some kind of key figure as far as like watching over that land. I went to the Church of Christ Temple Lot's website. Here's their apostles. They don't have like a prophet or like a central, like a president of the church. They just have the apostles. And actually, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's 8, 9. So I don't know. I don't know about that. I don't really care. Okay. So you have that. There's a thing here. Their basic beliefs. They have articles of faith, but they're different from ours. Some are kind of similar. And then you go to links and you go to resources and media archive. And then after that, it takes you to this website and you can look at some of their like, church meetings, sermons, whatever you want to call them. And it's this guy right here. This is Randy Sheldon, him with the mustache. Okay. So going back to the article, he says, and this is what they wanted. This is what's called the temple lot right here. Said Randy Sheldon, an elder with the Church of Christ temple lot. And I think that's even what it says here it says Elder Randy Sheldon. And when it says elder, it's not talking about the way that we use elder when we're talking about general authorities. I guess like he would be an actual like elder in their church, like in the elders quorum or whatever. Okay. In 1844, an angry mob in Illinois killed Joseph Smith. After his death, the Latter-day Saints movement splintered into several different belief groups. Sheldon says, "It wasn't what I call a happy family." The first group to return to independence in the late 1800s was the Church of Christ Temple Lot. By the way, I think I've said this before in other videos, but they refer to themselves as simply Church of Christ. But because there are other churches with similar names, and to avoid confusion, a more kind of like unofficial name is Church of Christ Temple Lot. Okay. So they're followers of the Book of Mormon, but separate from the larger Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. In the late 1800s, the smaller Church of Christ Temple Lot bought the sacred land where so many believe Jesus will return. It's owned it ever since. So that's just how it goes. This group, and I don't know the history behind that. The Interpreter Foundation, let's see, Interpreter Foundation History of the Temple Lot. They have a pretty comprehensive paper or article here that talks about the history of the Temple Lot. I want to say I've read this in full one time, not on the channel, but this is how I found out that the Independence Visitor Center is meant to be a temple in the future, because they record it right here. It was David O. McKay, Alvin R. Dyer. They made this to the revealed specifications of 61 feet and 87 feet to become part of the temple. But anyway, this has a comprehensive history of the Temple Lot, and it's just like, it makes me wonder. It's like, why couldn't somebody from our church have gotten there first and purchased it? Maybe it wasn't possible. Maybe they were fearing for their lives. I don't know. I'm sure that the Interpreter Foundation covers that, but that's what happened. Okay, Sheldon continues. There's been numerous times that people have tried to take it and they can't get it. End quote. The marker stones Joseph Smith laid for the temple sit inside the Church of Christ Temple Lot Visitor Center. Over time, followers of the larger, more well-known Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints returned to independence and set up a sprawling visitor center on land bordering the sacred Temple Lot soil. In addition, a third temple, also with roots in the Book of Mormon, the Community of Christ, erected its towering world headquarters literally across the street and overlooking the Temple Lot. And here it is, right here. When seen from above, it's clear all three faith traditions are staking a claim to be on or near the Temple Lot for the time when they all believe Jesus Christ will come to independence. Quote, this is from somebody else, Lachlan McKay with the Community of Christ. He says, in Community of Christ, my experience with it was not necessarily this idea that Jesus was going to return to this place. End quote. Of the three churches surrounding Temple Lot, the Community of Christ is the only one that has moved away from the belief that Jesus is literally returning to this place, shifting to a more symbolic notion of the second coming. And then he continues, we would not be focused on end times. We are focused on the here and now. Now, like I've said before, the Community of Christ is like really, I don't know. I think they've really changed over time quite a bit. Community of Christ, apostle, ordained. I just came across this. Oh my gosh. Well, all I know, I watched this video. This woman right here, she was ordained an apostle. Yeah, look at that. Janae Grover, ordained as an apostle. Catherine Momboy, ordained as an apostle. Barbara Carter, ordained to the Council of the 12 Apostles. So they clearly are not on the same wavelength as we are. Well, here's another one. Robin Linkhart ordained as an apostle. So they have women, they have female apostles. It looks like she's ordaining this guy to the presiding bishopric. When you go to their website, they have a lot of beliefs that have kind of gone the way of the world, as far as just all the stuff that you hear in commercials, environmentalism, and the spectrum of people that like different types of things, the rainbow colors. So it seems like they've become much, much more watered down than what they were in the past. Oh, this is that video I was talking about. In the last video, I was trying to find this guy right here. He went to one of their meetings, and he wasn't sure if the meeting was talking just about that congregation or the church as a whole, but they were having concerns about their finances and being able to continue. And that's because the younger generation, they're not really paying tithing. They're not as active in church. And so they're having some financial concerns. Yes, here's that video. So I'll put this in the description below. You might want to check that out. Okay. So anyway, you have this going on with them. Let's go back to the thing. Okay. So the Church of Christ, or the Community of Christ, they're watered down now. They don't believe in the physical second coming. It's symbolic. Okay. But the Latter-day Saints, with 16 million members worldwide, which now is more like 17 million, don't own the temple lot land, at least not now. Quote, "As we would say, in the Lord's time, everything will work out according to what the Lord would have us do," said Jeremiah Morgan, president of the Liberty Latter-day Saints stake. Okay, so the stake president over there. The smaller 6,000 member Church of Christ temple lot claims that there have been offers to buy the sacred spot. Sheldon, going back to this guy, a temple lot elder, sees himself as a keeper of the flame to Joseph Smith's revelation. Quote, okay, remember, it's this guy right here. He views himself as the keeper of the flame for the temple lot. He says, there's a gathering of forces, gathering of armies, and so forth like this, but they're taking on God. End quote. And if it seems like Sheldon sounds like he's on guard, there's valid reason for him to feel that way. In 1990, a former temple lot member burned their church to the ground. Sheldon says, in 1990, that church was burned down by a crazy man. Sheldon keeps close watch over the temple lot because he knows many others are too. Quote, "We know the devil doesn't like this place. We know the devil would like to erase us and eliminate us, but when you're dealing with God, that ain't going to be done," Sheldon said. When asked by Fox 4 elders with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints said they're not trying to acquire the temple lot ground. But Sheldon said there have been inquiries as recently as this year. And this article was written in 2018. Let's see, posted October 29th, 2018. Which is interesting because if he's telling the truth, this was President Nelson's first year as president of the church. So it'd be interesting if President Nelson wanted to try and go ahead and make another offer. You know what I mean? Okay. And that wouldn't necessarily contradict what these elders of our church said, because it seems like Fox News or Fox 4 is talking to like a stake president, and they probably wouldn't be privy to what the higher up leadership is doing. Like there may have been just private communications between the first presidency, Quorum of the 12, 70s, whoever, between them. Well, I guess, isn't it the presiding bishopric that's like over the buildings and stuff like that, in building temples and stuff like that? So they'd probably be the ones that would have made the offer, and the stake president wouldn't necessarily be privy to that. So I think there is a chance that Sheldon's telling the truth and that maybe the church made an offer in 2018. So anyway, he insists it's not for sale and lives each day keeping his mind ready for the second coming of Jesus Christ right here in Independence. And Sheldon is firm on the question of whether his church would ever sell the temple lot ground to the larger Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Quote, "It ain't happening, never will happen." Well, I mean, like you said, Sheldon, you're dealing with God. So we'll see what happens. But, we're not hostile toward them. I don't mean for that to sound hostile, but, that's the truth. We'll see what happens and what the Lord has in store. If the if the community of Christ is struggling to keep their membership, to bring in revenue via tithing, then I can't imagine it would be much better for the Church of Christ Temple Lot because they're significantly smaller. The Community of Christ, they have Community of Christ, Wikipedia. I think it was something like 250,000. Yeah, look at this right here, 250,000. They have 250,000, and let's see. The Church of Christ Temple Lot. I looked this up just recently, like in the last video, I think. They only have 7,310. And like I said in that video, I have videos that get more views than they have members of their church. It's really small. It's really small. So, only time will tell. If the second coming is still, and I don't think this, but if it's say 10 years out or more, and I don't think that, but if it is, a lot of things can happen within 10 years. A lot of things can happen within 5, 4, 3 years. So you just never know. You never know. I think I'm going to try and reach out to them and just see if I can talk, just, interview them, just talk about things. It would be civil. It would just be just like I do with my Jewish guests to learn more about their perspective and how they view things and maybe build a bridge. I'm going to try and do that. They have a contact thing here on their website, and they put the phone numbers of their apostles on here. So who knows? Joni, the Joyous Genealogist, she's someone that I'm friends with. She lives up there in the Kansas City area. I've interviewed her. She has a channel. Go here. Joni, where are you? Here you are. Okay, Joni, the Joyous Genealogist. She actually has been in contact with some of their apostles. She's done work for them. And she said that they're nice and stuff. And I think they're pretty accessible. So I think it'd be neat to see if I can talk to one of them, do an interview. From what I gather here, it seems like they have a few different locations. The primary one is in Missouri. But as you can see here, it looks like they have a branch or something out in Phoenix. And then this guy up here, this apostle, he's in Mexico. So they're obviously not nearly as large, but it seems like they have a few different branches. Oh, here we go. Locales and missions. Oh, that's more spread out than I thought. Interesting. So these are, let's see. Oh, so this is inside the United States and then this is outside. So they have stuff going on here in El Salvador, I guess, Honduras, the Yucatan Peninsula, Mexico. Have something going on here in Kenya. And then in the Philippines. That's interesting. And then let's see, in the United States, here's the Phoenix one. This is just kind of in sort of North Phoenix. Let's see what's over here. Oh yeah, Grand Junction. Is this Idaho? Boise. Colville, I think in British Columbia, or maybe Alberta. Anyway, whatever. So you get the idea. So it'd be interesting to maybe talk to some of them. Okay, is that it? Is that it? Yes, it is. Wow, we covered a lot of stuff. But I personally like this video. I enjoy these videos too, because I'm like constantly learning and finding out new things. Yeah, but that's going to be it for this one. So, oh no, one more thing. The Book of Mormon challenge. Okay. The Flood the Earth campaign. I just want to give you an update. So as of right now, I've recorded a total of 4,151 copies of the Book of Mormon that have been given out by you and me, with the potential of 15,509, which is to say some of you have blogs or, social media where it's like, well, there's at least this number that this post could have reached. So I'm kind of keeping track of that too. The number of people sharing has gone up to 325, which is still pretty dismal. So given the fact that there's thousands of people that watch all my videos, any given video, there's at least like maybe 3,000. It ranges from like 3 to 12,000. So only 325 is pretty sad. So if you've given out a copy of the Book of Mormon, let me know in the comments and I'll add you to this. And you can be anonymous if you want to. And then a big development was from the last time that I updated this, there's 2 more people that have reported their people meeting with the missionaries. Okay, because before it was 7, well, now it's 9. So now there's 9 people that have met with missionaries as a result of this campaign that we're all doing together. But I'll add you to the list over here. Just let me know how you shared the copy of the Book of Mormon. If you want to be anonymous, I can just put you under the anonymous row right here. Otherwise, I'll just put you on here and just please, do it right now. Do it after this video. Send a copy of the Book of Mormon to somebody. Use the Gospel Library app. It has a share button when you go to scriptures, and you can text it or you can post it on social media. You can send a direct message, whatever you want to do. Okay, that's going to be it for this one. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.